So this video is going to be a bit more personal than the other ones I've made so far. Something you may not know about me is that I've been struggling with anxiety and depression lately. And due to this, I've had a lot of trouble in school this semester. And so in this video, I'm just going to talk about my personal experiences with the anxiety and depression that I've had so far. So I guess my problems started out during finals week of last semester at the end of spring. For about, it was over a week long. I was having just really bad anxiety. It was getting worse and worse every day, crying for hours, just pacing. I had trouble falling asleep, and then I would just wake up early because my body just physically hurt so bad, and it was just torture. I just couldn't think, I couldn't concentrate, I didn't really know what to do. It just kept going in cycles. Like, I was so anxious that I couldn't think, so I became really upset. And being really upset, I was like, oh, I can't study for this. I became more anxious. And then that made it so I couldn't think anymore, so it just kept going back and forth between the anxiety and the depression. Just like, it kept going cycles off of each other. On one of the days, I just said maybe if I go to a library I'll study better, but instead of going to a library I just kept walking and walking, and I didn't really know where I was going, and just wandered around, was completely lost. I guess, like, the weird thing is I kind of enjoyed the feeling of being lost, because, not really enjoyed, but I found it exciting, so in a way I kind of wanted to be lost. I don't know, I was miserable the whole time. At the very worst time, like on the very worst day, I just felt so out of control. Like, I was so anxious, so restless, I was just throwing things and scratching myself frantically and crying and shouting, and it was horrible. It's the worst I've ever felt in my life up until that point. And yeah, I know I should have gotten help at that point, but for some reason I was convinced that if I talked to someone about it, that they would be upset with me or something like that. I don't really know why, but yeah, I definitely should have gotten help. Basically, I was just so anxious that I just couldn't study for my finals at all. But luckily, I had been doing really well all semester, so I managed to get good grades overall. Over the next month, I had some sort of mild depression. Like, I wasn't doing too well, but I wasn't terrible. Basically, I was just thinking about that awful sort of time that I had at the end of school, and I was just thinking about it for hours a day. I just couldn't get it out of my head because I was so afraid that something like that would happen again. And then for a while in the middle of summer, it was fine. I was feeling really good, and I thought all my problems were over and I didn't need to worry about that sort of stuff anymore. And then in sort of mid to late August, I started feeling nervous again. There was this week where I was just kind of nervous every day, and at the end of that week I had my first panic attack. It happened, basically I was alone at home for a few days, and for some reason, I don't know why, I was just feeling really nervous. I was afraid someone's going to break in, like murder or something. And so I turned on all the lights in the house, and I was mostly okay, but I just made sure all the doors were locked, all the lights in the house were on, that kind of thing. Kind of barricaded myself in my room. I was also thinking about next semester coming up in school, and I was really afraid that something like that would happen again, since my last experience at school was the worst week of my life. I was worried I was going to have another one of those, and that thought just triggered this panic attack, and it was pretty scary. Panic attacks are always scary, but this was my first one, so it definitely was a frightening experience. And after it was over, it's like I just didn't really want to talk about it. It's like, okay, I'll just pretend that never happened, and I'll go on with my life, sort of thing. Then, later that week, I had a test to get my driver's license. While I was with the driving instructor, I had another panic attack, and we managed to make it back to the starting spot. But yeah, I definitely failed the test because I couldn't think. Like, I was stopping at green lights and definitely couldn't parallel park. Just hyperventilating. Afterward, my parents seemed really worried, and they took me to the doctor. My general sort of doctor. Then I also needed to get a blood test done, and I don't like needles, so I had another panic attack kind of after and during that as well. So that was right before I went back to school. Okay, September for me was an absolutely horrible month. Basically, I felt anxious every day, all the time. It got to the point where every day I was just so anxious that I was dreading the next day coming because it just felt really bad. It wasn't quite as bad as like how the finals week of the previous semester was, but it was so bad I was just having trouble paying attention in class and getting homework done and that sort of thing. When my anxiety was pretty bad, like I would start breathing really heavily to the point where like other people would notice, like they would ask like, hey, what's up? Or like people I didn't know would just kind of like look at me or something like that. And I would just worry about everything, like, how am I going to be able to get this homework done? Did I lock the door to my room? Will I have enough time to do everything? Did I do this? Did I forget to turn my homework in? Or did I put my homework in the right homework box? Just all these questions, I'm just continually like worrying about them. A lot of the time I was worried that I was going to have another panic attack, because the week before I went back to school I had 3 panic attacks in a week. And I was really worried that I was going to have another one, except luckily I didn't. At least in September I didn't have any more. Yeah, during my physics prelim, basically I was just so nervous that I got physically sick. My stomach hurt so bad, and I sometimes felt really cold and got goosebumps all over my arms. Sometimes I got really just hot, and I just couldn't think. It wasn't a good prelim. Even after the prelim for hours, my stomach still hurt really bad. And a lot of the time when I was having anxiety, I would have the need to go be alone. Like, I would often go to the kitchen or the bathroom or the common room if no one was there. And if there was, I would probably hide in the trash room. And yeah, just when my anxiety got really bad, I'd become sort of afraid of people. I don't really know why or what I was afraid of doing, but things like overhearing people having a conversation or just someone walking down the hall would give me that afraid feeling, that feeling that you're so afraid that it feels like your stomach's like dropping kind of thing every single time. If I was trying to be alone in the hallway and someone was walking down the hall, I would just run, try to hide in some sort of unoccupied room. This type of intense anxiety happened probably once or twice a day, lasted for several hours, and then in the times when my anxiety wasn't quite so bad, I'd still have anxiety like all the time. I'd be nervous all the time. I'd have trouble concentrating, worrying thoughts. It was just horrible. I was having just mild depression throughout this, feeling pretty hopeless and awful. I was just miserable, and tired, and anxious just all the time. And at this point, it just occurred to me that I can't go through a whole semester like that. It was just too awful and miserable. Like, I wouldn't be able to make it. So I decided to get help from my school. They have counseling and psychiatric help and that sort of thing. didn't help right away. Like, I still failed math prelim around that time too. But it was definitely worth going to, having someone there to talk to, getting on medications. Definitely made things better than they were. So I started taking meds end of September, early October. Was doing a slightly better due to one of them that acted like immediately, but the other one sort of took a bit of time to like get into my system. So I was doing better than I was, but not great still. Then after that, I found out my grandma was really sick, so that kind of put me back a bit. I was really upset about that. I just had another panic attack at that time when I found out. I was just so worried. Like, I didn't know what would happen. It was kind of awful. Then, when I went back to school after that, because that was during fall break, so then when I went back to school, like, I talked to my therapist, and basically she suggested that I drop class. Like, I was resistant to it at first because like I'd already put in like a month and a half of work into that class, but I just was under so much stress I didn't know like if I could handle it, and eventually I was like, yeah, that's a good idea, so dropped my circuits class. After that I felt a lot better because the circuits class that I dropped had about 12 hours of homework a week, so dropping that definitely reduced the amount of stress I had, gave me a little bit more time to like try to relax and not be quite so stressed out. So even though I felt better after dropping the class, I'm still having some anxiety, but overall feeling pretty good. I was feeling a bit better, but still having some problematic anxiety. So my doctor increased my dose of antidepressant because I was on a pretty low dose before that. So then along came November. At the beginning I was feeling pretty good actually for a while, maybe about a week. After my doctor had increased the antidepressant, I had another panic attack. I was with my boyfriend and we were like sort of taking a walk together, and my thoughts were, I didn't want to go walk down by the track because there were other people on it and I was just afraid, just so afraid that they'd be watching me and they would think how terrible I was. And for some reason I became like really afraid of this and had a pretty bad panic attack at that time. So I was feeling a bit off for a few days after that, but then I went back to feeling better. About a week after that, just all of a sudden, I got really depressed. Like, I didn't want to do anything except to go home and sleep. Just all I wanted to do was sleep because I was so tired. And over like the next week of school, I didn't really have energy to go to class. I had trouble falling asleep, and I wasn't attending a lot of my classes. I forced myself to go sometimes to go to one class a day, like if it was a lab or something I couldn't make up. I just forced myself to go. I called my parents and I'm like, I'm not doing well, I need to go home. So I went home. Luckily I don't live too far away from my college, so I went home for the night. Then they brought me back in the morning. I really didn't want to go back, but I guess I had to. Then I had an appointment with my doctor after that. He took me off the antidepressant to see if that would help, because he thought maybe it was increased the antidepressant that had triggered this really bad depression. But the only thing that changed is that made me able to sleep now, which was a little better because I was really tired, but I was sleeping more than 14 hours a day, and just all I wanted to do was sleep and sleep and sleep and just go home and sleep. That's all I wanted, because I was just so, like, the most miserable time of my life kind of thing. Like, I couldn't function. I still was missing at least 90% of my classes. So since that didn't really help, I saw my doctor a few days later. He put me back on a low dose of the antidepressant, which I was on before. And then I left school for a while, like a few days. And I had to postpone some of my prelims because I was going to miss them. And I guess the next few days it just got worse. It was like being more sad than I ever felt in my entire life. And I had no idea why. And all I wanted to do was sleep. And if I couldn't sleep, I wanted to eat because that was like the next best thing. So during my waking hours, I was either lying in bed scrolling through Facebook or talking to my parents, hoping that would cheer me up, eating and stuff like that. Like, it was scary because, like, as I was thinking, I was just so sad. I had no idea what I was sad about, and that's kind of a really scary feeling. I think at this point sometime during this week I had another panic attack, like, am I going to fail? Am I ever going to get better? Like, that sort of thing. So yeah, basically this time I couldn't really function, and when I was home, my parents forced me to take a shower because I wasn't showering, I wasn't functioning. And basically, by showering, it means laying at the bottom, the water is pouring on top of me, crying really hard for about 40 minutes. And yeah, it got worse for the first few days when I was home, but since I was on a very low dose of antidepressant, it eventually started to get a little better. And I went back to school for a few days, and I was feeling good enough to go to most of my classes and get some of my homework done, at least most of it, but I had to postpone another prelim because I couldn't study well enough. Like, I was just barely getting by. And then it was Thanksgiving break, so I was lucky about that I could just relax for a bit, or try to relax, since I was still feeling really depressed. Well, during this depression, my anxiety overall wasn't too bad, luckily, but yeah, this is the 3rd of December, which is a little over a week after I started being on a low dose of antidepressant again. I was kind of pretty much back to square one, having anxiety with a little bit of depression. So my anxiety was getting worse, not quite as bad as being on no meds at all. So my doctor adjusted my meds, and yeah, all the time I was going to therapy and stuff. That definitely helps, because you get someone to talk to. One problem I had in December was one of the makeup prelims that I had to take, since I missed them earlier, was for math, and I had already failed a math prelim earlier in the semester, and this makeup prelim I did really bad on, and I got really nervous and was freaking out because I need at least a B- in this class to affiliate with the major that I want. And so I was really nervous. I'm like, I'm not gonna do this, I'm gonna fail. Like, it was awful. So I talked to my advisor, my doctor, my therapist, all those people, and eventually the advisor contacted my professors, and we came up with the solution that my grade for this semester in math would be an incomplete. Next semester I'll have to sit in on all the lectures, take all the tests for that math class, and then that grade will be counted as my grade for this class. Then over the summer I'll have to take the next math class to be caught up with everything. So yeah, I think that is probably the best solution that I could come up with. Like, I didn't have to take the final, which definitely made me feel a bit better. I'm feeling less nervous about the whole math situation since I get another chance. And I'm pretty glad that happened, that I get to redo all of that. Dropping that other course earlier, and then taking math as an incomplete. Now, currently with the class I'm taking, I have just enough credits to get by, so pretty lucky there. Currently, I'm still feeling anxious, and maybe not very depressed though. Worried about sort of my other finals, just anxious in general, because I always am. I'm still kind of getting my meds adjusted and changing things around, increasing doses, that sort of stuff. So I am right now okay-ish for the most part. I just need to get through this next week of finals, and then I can go home for winter break, and that will be wonderful because I can relax and see my family and everyone, and that will be good. So after the whole thing with worrying about my math grade, yeah, my meds are being slowly increased and adjusted. We're going to be adjusting them for a while until we come up with something that works. Okay, so my advice: if you're experiencing anything like this at all, get help. It won't make everything completely better right away, but it will definitely be better than doing nothing, and getting help early will make your life easier later. And if I hadn't been getting help, like, the advisors wouldn't have probably have been so understanding about helping me, like, get makeup tests and letting me get a second chance in my math class. So it's definitely good if you're having problems to go seek help early and definitely get the help you need. So yeah, I know that this video is pretty personal. I hope if anyone can relate, like, let me know. I just felt like putting this out there. So yeah, okay. Terrified.